How's it going, everyone? I'm VenomousStare, back with exciting StarCraft 2 action. This time we have Game 2 of a best of 5, not a best of 3, a best of 5, between Jim and Scarlett. Jim has made his first pylon out here. He's in the top right of Whirlwind, a standard macro map that has received a ton of play, and he's going to do an early probe scout again. This is a great move, especially when you have a reputation as a cheesy, aggressive player like Jim. Even if you're just going Nexus first and have no intention of cannon rushing or doing proxy gates or proxying anything, early probe scouting still makes your Zerg opponent worry. In the bottom left of Whirlwind we have Scarlett, the only foreigner to qualify for GSL this season. If you don't know what a foreigner is, it's a non-Korean. And that expression exists because StarCraft 1, it comes from StarCraft 1. StarCraft 1 was considered so much a Koreans game because of how heavily the Koreans dominated. It was even more dominated by Koreans than StarCraft 2. So, StarCraft 1, you know, it's the Koreans game. They dominated it. Seoul, Korea was the epicenter of that scene. But foreigner was this term to describe kind of everyone else, the field. I kind of like to think of it as, you know, remember when Tiger Woods was just god tier, just absolutely the best golfer, and a lot of the majors were kind of predicted as like, okay, who do you have, Tiger Woods or the field? And that's kind of how StarCraft 1 was, the Koreans were just so good that it was very hard for the foreigners to compete. StarCraft 2 is similar but not as bad, and Scarlett has proven that she is a very strong player, a strong Zerg player, and she has a history of snuffing out Protoss cheese. As a Zerg, in my opinion, she's one of these Zergs that's hard to cheese. And what do I mean by that? As we see Jim scouting around with the probe after going double gate, and he has an expansion. Notice Jim's going to be able to double produce workers very quickly. This means that his spike in income will be quicker than it would have been if he had gone gateway expand. And okay, stalkers. So this is important because a stalker opening is indicative of the fact that you want to deny Overlord scouting, which is also obviously indicative of the fact that you want to hide something. So Jim is probably going to doing a cheese of some kind, and he's also making an Adept to ward off the Lings. Double gas in the main and a Twilight comes down, and Scarlett is running around with the Ling. She's going to see it. But, to be honest, seeing a Twilight this early, it's nice. Like, you probably can deduce that it's not Stargate. But, it doesn't really mean a whole lot, because there are so many things Protoss can do. And we see here Jim, he's going Robo. So even if Scarlett had scouted this, which she didn't, this could be, well, a Warp Gate all-in, pretty much any Warp Gate all-in. And this could just be used for Warp Prism. That is a significant threat in Legacy of the Void, because obviously the normal old proxy pylon got nerfed from how it was in HOTS. It could be DT drop, Archon drop, it could be a lot of things still. And Scarlett, remember, has just seen the Twilight. But with the Resonating Glaives being chrono boosted, it's probably going to be a Warp Gate all-in. We see 2 more gates being put down. And whenever you see chrono boost on a Twilight Council with an upgrade and a Stalker out here denying scouting, it just screams Warp Gate all in. We can see Jim's adding down the extra gates. What's Scarlett's response? Well, she's going +1 Lings. And that's kind of interesting because Adepts are thought of as this unit that beat Zerglings. And we see Jim is going for Resonating Glaives, of course, so that's even better against Lings. But once +1 finishes, Zerglings are actually pretty good against Warp Gate units. And to be honest, unless you make sentries, Warp Gate units against +1 Massling Bane is actually pretty bad, and Scarlett's Baneling Nest is about to finish. And to be honest, Baneling speed isn't nearly as important against defending Warp Gate all-ins as it is defending Terran bio pushes, because oftentimes Protoss will just make sentries and easily deflect your Banes, or they won't make sentries at all and the Banes will just laugh them out of the game. And as soon as Jim pushes out to try to be aggressive, Scarlett counterattacks. Great move. That causes Jim's attention to be diverted. It causes him to have to warp in at home. Zerg newbies, you want to copy this. If you know Protoss is attacking you, which obviously due to the mass Lings on the way, Scarlett knows, you want to counterattack if you have Lings out on the map, because sometimes a bad player will just have their door down and you can deal devastating worker damage. But Scarlett, of course, even against a very good player like Jim, was able to delay the push slightly, make him warp in at home. And Jim's probably going to push right down here at the third with these Adepts. Scarlett has bans already, she has a spine, her +1's done. I think Scarlett holds this pretty damn easily. There's no sentries at all, it's pure Adept, and Adepts are light units, they get hit really hard. And here we see the Adepts are being split out. The phase shades get them relatively far away, but at the same time it's only one phase shade. The warp prism goes down, and despite the fact that the Adepts got away safely for a second, they were obviously just surrounded by the super fast Zerglings. And without +1 and without sentries, those Adepts really didn't stand a chance. Jim's kind of out here by this third base, doing a Charlie Clips which hole did she put it in routine, and it's not really working for him here. As with this many Lings and Banes already out on the map, Jim's not really going to be able to take a third. He's going to warp in Mass Adept here. His DT Shrine finishes. Now Scarlett does have Spores out, so these DTs aren't really going to do any damage harassment-wise. Another Warp Prism is out for Jim. I suspect due to the fact that the composition here is a Ling Bane from Scarlett, Jim's probably just going to try to make a bunch of Archons, which of course do severe splash damage and bonus damage to Bio, and they're very good against Lings and Banes because if the Zerg mismicros a little bit, it runs their Banelings into Archons. An Archon can take a ludicrous amount of Baneling shots. Remember, it has like 370 total health. Alright, 360, never mind. But still, that's a ton of Baneling hits. That's a lot, almost twice as much as a tank. Think about how bad crashing Banelings into a tank is. So Scarlett's going to have to micro pretty well, but Scarlett's definitely capable of doing this. Really, it's more of the fact that she needs to not miss micro, as we see another Archon being made there for Jim, and more Adepts. So Jim is sticking to this mass anti-Ling composition, but still no sentries. Again, sentries are so valuable at dealing with Banes, and Scarlett has some Queens too, and a lot of Banes. Scarlett making even more Banes. She's going to run some of the Banes down. Peek say, do you really not have any sentries so I can just run at you without the risk of being cut in half? And Jim's saying like, yeah, I'm doing an Adept all-in. Of course, Jim has no third. The third is being scouted. Here comes the engagement. Scarlett is thinking about going in with Banes. A few Banes go into Archons there, but more come in from the east side. And Jim is just going to get crushed here with Mass Bane. And Lings are going to clean up the rest. Jim is trying to do a little bit of hot pickup micro and maybe drop Adepts onto Banes and make multiple Banes go off on one Adept, but it doesn't matter if you look at supply here. Jim is being beaten relatively badly. Hydras are even on the way here for our Zerg player, Scarlett. She has a fourth. Jim has to see that and just get so sad. Jim picks up out of the Warp Prism, drops down again, but at this point, Scarlett can almost make Mass Hydra and defend, so now she'll have two different units to help her defend units that counter light units. That was an interestingly phrased sentence to end the cast, but regardless, that was game 2. Scarlett's currently up 2-0. Jim at this point, he's been beaten in a cheese, and then he's failed a cheese, so it's going to be tough goings for him to try to come back in this best of 5. Make sure you subscribe for more, and leave me a like rating.